I think current the this is problem in Solana ecosystem because there are no bigger organizations which have huge fundings and they have grants program. Like there are literally two or three grants program in Solana, and anyone developing in Solana really has to be dependent on a single organization to get a grant. And if we have a lot of funding and lot of ways in which fundings can be distributed, there will be like a huge influx of developers on Solana. So that's our goal to like make uh, to like get funding accessible to each and every single developer who is like willing to experiment around different block ideas in blockchain. Because if you are on Solana, you definitely will try something new to build that's only possible on Solana, or to experiment around something that's new and never has been tried before. And when you when you try to experiment, you definitely, because infrastructure cost and things like that are a lot on Solana specifically. And when you want to experiment, you need a lot of funds, and no one is ready to invest in just an experiment. And if we have a lot of funding available, I think uh, a lot of new experiments will be done in the Solana ecosystem.
Welcome to Into the Forest with Pine. Today I have Irfan from Cubic. Irfan, can you kind of talk about what Cubic is and kind of what you guys are working on there?
Cubic is a decentralized resource distribution platform. So what we are doing is we are helping public goods and open source projects on Solana to receive funds decided by the community. The community decides where the funds go to, which project deserve the most fund decided by the community voting. We distribute funds to those projects. So it's a decentralized way of allocating resources.
Yeah, awesome. So, like, starting off, like, why are like public goods funding so important for a blockchain ecosystem? Like, why do you feel they're so important?
Yeah, so if you see the ethos of blockchains or crypto, it was like always about open internet, free software, and things like that. But like we obviously have private companies, things like that, private code, oh, but having but like we need, in any kind of ecosystem, we need public goods. We need things that everyone can use without any restrictions, or without any restrictions, things like that. And these goods, especially in blockchains, if you see, there are hundreds of libraries, millions of code libraries which are there, which are not uh, well funded in order for developers to maintain those. So yeah, this is a big problem, not just in Web3 but in Web2 also. But in Web3 it's easy to solve uh, because of various ways. There are new coordination mechanisms being discovered, new things being introduced, and these ways make it really easy for people to coordinate and solve these problems which were not possible on the existing internet. So yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. How do you guys kind of think about encouraging people to get involved in like contributing in these open goods funding and like, yeah, how do you think about convincing people or like making the process more simple?
Yeah, so one of the biggest problem is convincing people to go and participate in the process, because this process is only completed once people go and vote for or contribute to these projects. So most of the projects which participate in these grants round are actually those who have users who who have been like in use for a long time. And for example, we have open book we have Solana playground, tiny dancer, in many projects like these. So they already have a small or large fan base or user base which is ready to support them, because they have been using them for a long time. And uh, and they are so we have right now we have around 800 unique contributors in just 9 or 10 days. And most of those people donated like less than $1 to a project. And if you go and donate a single dollar, it will match up to 20, 50, or $100 to the project. So it gives that positive feedback to the user that I'm just giving away $1 and the project is getting a lot in return. So why not just go and support because I have been using this tool, or it is beneficial for the ecosystem.
Is that how you guys kind of landed on quadratic funding? You thought that that's like a great way to convince people to donate?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, quadratic funding really makes the process easier. It makes us decide. So we already have a pool from which we give the grant, and now we tell people to contribute, which increases the final amount of money reaching to projects. Because we have a in this round we have a had a pool of $50,000, and we are already at $45,000 contributed by the community. So it increased the size of final funding that goes to these projects. And now when they see that uh, when I'm donating just $1, the project is getting $20 or $30, so they are convinced to donate, and it's easy to get donations. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
totally.
quadratic funding really helps in deciding which project actually deserves more funds from that pool.
Did you guys play with other like different methods and like land on quadratic, or how did you kind of land there?
Yeah, so we started with quadratic funding, but there are different ways, or there are different modifications built upon quadratic funding. But I think there is retroactive public goods funding. There are different mechanisms, like around 10 mechanisms right now in existence that are used to fund public goods. But I think in order to start, we do not want to make things complicated because it's hard to make people understand how these things work. So we decided to start with the simplest one and experiment with where we are failing, and then modify it a bit and use the most optimal way to tackle that problem. For example, initially we do not have the civil problem. Initially we do not have the code the problem where people like decide and bribe and things like that. So these are not the problems which we face initially. So we decided to keep it as simple as possible in order to people to understand the thing, and participate in it.
Yeah, that's definitely a good way to do it. Like so far, like what lessons have you kind of learned along the way on setting up this platform and running these rounds?
Yeah, so one of the biggest lesson is actually it's hard to really convince organizations to come and sponsor, because the pool is sponsored by organization. We are figuring out ways how we can like incentivize, or what benefits does the organization get if they are going to sponsor the pool, because Solana is a smaller ecosystem compared to EVM, and uh, it's hard to get the pool up in order to start. So we are experimenting around different ways in which we can incentivize, or in which we can like attract more and more organizations to sponsor the pool. And the second thing which we have learned is, when it comes to contribution or support for project, it totally depends on how many followers or what amount of followers the project has on Twitter, which is not a good measure to actually see how big of a impact a project creates. So we are trying to come up with new we'll definitely try to like work around these areas so that we can make the process as fair as possible for every project, like even if they have like 100 followers or 10,000 followers, it should not matter.
What methods have you kind of thought to solve that problem? Because that is a really like kind of difficult problem in terms of like attention and stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely a big problem, but like there is no single method that can solve all these problems. For example, a dev tool might have more people visiting them on GitHub or their documentation compared to on Twitter. So a campaign on Twitter might not help them, but a small thing on GitHub, on their GitHub repository, or on their landing page might help get them more people to vote for them, or some other kind of integrations. There are small things which can be tweaked, and these so that these projects can actually benefit. Because obviously if a project has a large user base or has large people using or utilizing that resource, it should mean that the project needs more funding to sustain. compared to a project which has just a few number of users or things like that. So yeah, we will definitely, we have some ideas in mind how we can improve these methods, and how we can attract more support for these projects.
That totally makes sense. How about on the organization contribution side? What have you guys kind of thought about in like incentivizing them or getting them more willing to kind of contribute to the Solana community as a whole?
Yeah, right now, few of the methods which we are trying are like reaching out to launch pads that, hey, uh, or any organization or any company which is launching a token, we are just saying that, hey, can you just allocate some part of your token, some part of your community allocation to the pool, so that it can be used to fund public goods, and in return we like, in those token will be distributed in a span of like 1 or 2 years, and in return we can help you, if we can build a good reputation on socials, we can help you like push your token launch a little, maybe this we are not sure about, but we can use your token and ask people to vote using your token, and it adds that positive angle because the organization is helping public goods, and it's, I guess, win-win for both the sides, the distributors, which are obviously us, and the organization which is launching a token.
Yeah, it makes sense. And in the end, they kind of benefit from having a more thriving ecosystem.
Yeah.
What has like surprised you the most about the way people have been using your platform so far?
So the biggest surprise was like, uh, if you see previous records like on Ethereum, you will see that in the initial rounds, they had like very less number of people donating very huge amount of money. Like they would have like 200 people donating just $50,000 to projects. But like now on Solana, if you see, we have like 800 people donating around $45,000 in just 7 days. And if you see the distribution of uh, the difference is like right now number of users on blockchain networks have increased, and the capital is now distributed to more people. So I guess this is really interesting to see more people participating, but crowdfunding the same amount compared to less number of people participating to crowdfund the same amount, uh, between two different time spans. And these can have different, quadratic funding obviously takes benefit if there are more number of participants. It's not optimized for less number of contributors. If there are more contributors, it becomes easier to decide which project has more impact compared to lesser number, so it has really helped.
Yeah, and maybe also Solana transactions fees might help
Yeah,
contribute into
definitely.
that because you can just donate $1 and it's less than that in fees.
Yeah, we have like
Yep.
a lot of donations which were like less than even $1. Like people were, we even accept donations in meme coins, and people were donating $0.01 worth of meme coins, and yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Um, so in a world where public goods funding is like there's 10x the amount of money or 50x the amount of money being put to public good funding on Solana, how do you see the Solana ecosystem different than it is today?
I think current this is problem in Solana ecosystem because there are no bigger organizations which have huge fundings and they have grants program. Like there are literally 2 or 3 grants program in Solana, and anyone developing in Solana really has to be dependent on a single organization to get a grant. And if we have a lot of funding and lot of ways in which fundings can be distributed, there will be like a huge influx of developers on Solana. So that's our goal to like make uh, to like get funding accessible to each and every single developer who is like willing to experiment around different block ideas in blockchain. Because if you are on Solana, you definitely will try something new to build that's only possible on Solana, or to experiment around something that's new and never has been tried before. And when you go to when you try to experiment, you definitely, because infrastructure cost and things like that are a lot on Solana specifically. And when you want to experiment, you need a lot of funds, and no one is ready to invest in just an experiment. And if we have a lot of funding available, I think uh, a lot of new experiments will be done in the Solana ecosystem, which might scale in future to a larger or bigger product or idea, something like that, and then they can fund back the treasuries to keep the cycle going.
Yeah, I really like that vision. Um, what kind of lessons did you guys take from Gitcoin when you guys were building out Cubic, and like what did they do that you kind of took some like properties of that like you didn't have to learn the lesson the hard way?
Yeah, I guess Gitcoin has done most of the work in this space, and we are highly inspired by the Gitcoin team, the Gitcoin DAO, and I think Gitcoin is mostly going on the protocol route of doing this thing, like build a protocol and ask others to build products on those protocols or just do grants on their base layer. So, but we are focusing more on the product side of it. We definitely read a lot about on their governance forums and things like that to learn how Bitcoin has reached the point they are. It's really mind blowing that they were able to distribute around $60 million to open source and public goods on Ethereum, and are more than, I guess, 3,000 projects have gotten funding this way, and there are huge names there, and we share similar visions, and we think that we can achieve this on Solana. Mm, it's just that, I guess, the times were different, and we need to have some changes because Bitcoin had a lot of support from bigger organizations at that time, and it's not currently. It's hard to get that support on Solana for just starting out, because Vitalik was a huge advocate for quadratic funding and Gitcoin on Ethereum, if you see, and we do not currently have someone like that to to back the whole thing, and to actually you need that top of the funnel influencers in order to influence people to participate in the mechanism. And yeah, and we are going the product route right now. We are not going the protocol route. We think that it's time to build apps, and uh, and not focus on building protocols. Or long term, we might convert it into a DAO, because we do not want to control who gets into the round, and how the distribution of treasury happens each round. We do not want to control that. We obviously are advocate for decentralization, and let's see how it goes.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I definitely do think apps are like a lot more needed like at this stage in crypto. What's kind of on the horizon for you guys, and kind of what are you guys excited about in like kind of the future for Cubic or just like right now?
Yeah, so I guess right now we are getting a lot of traction, and in few organizations are interested in doing in because as Solana grows, there will be more bigger organizations who are looking into distributing grants to people building on their protocols. So they are looking into ways to fund those initiatives, and I think they are exploring quadratic funding. And a lot of other organizations are willing to put in money. We have been talking to a lot of them who are like, hey, we want to help build us. How can we help? Just let us know. So I think we are moving towards the direction where Solana ecosystem will also be known for public goods funding, or like having more open source initiatives from inside the ecosystem.
Yeah, that's awesome. Bringing it back to you, like how did you kind of first get involved in crypto, and kind of what led you on your journey to like being in Cubic?
Yeah, so from the start itself, I was like a huge open source maxi, and I started writing code and doing stuff in my college. I was always involved in open source communities, and I knew the problem of funding, open source funding, that it's a big problem. There are not many ways this can be solved. uh, GitHub does sponsorships. There are Patreon and things like that. Buy me a coffee, but these are like not the proper way. I guess this can be done, and when I started working in crypto, I started with actually Super Team and Lamport DAO, and as I usually don't go the financial. I usually don't look into crypto as a finance thing where you can like prof you earn a lot of profits and airdrops and things like that. I'm mostly like it's a great coordination mechanism that can be used to actually do different things which were not possible on the existing internet. So this is a great experiment, uh, and this thing can be actually scaled maybe to web 2 open source projects, what Gitcoin has been doing, because uh, they have been also experimenting with their Ukraine rounds and their non web 3 community rounds, and as and on Solana, with the speed and how cheap the network is, you can maybe give it a shot and try if you can scale it to a Web 2 audience, these same mechanisms, and let's see if uh, this problem can be actually solved. So yeah, that's how we started, and I think there is. And while we were working, we came up with a lot of other ideas that can be done around it in order to like uh, achieve the original dream we had of like helping the open source community in Web 2. So yeah, that's the goal, and that's how I started.
Well, that's an awesome vision. I think that's a great way to wrap things up. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.